guys, welcome to another installment of the Loving to Be Me Roundtable. I'm here with shall I call you just JFO? Or do I call
Yeah,
you JFO? What do I call you?
just JFO is my business, but everyone calls
Okay.
me JFO.
Okay, so JFO, she's going to tell you a little bit about what she does, but we're going to jam and talk about astrology, and how astrology can help us love ourselves more and sort of become our best selves. And we're just going to talk about some really wonderful things. So thank you so much for joining me, and tell us a little bit about what you do and where to find you and all that good stuff before we just talk.
Awesome. So what I do is a loaded question. So
Right. Yeah.
I have been, I'll just say it this way. My whole life, I was an artist. I was a performer. So really what I do is I'm an artist. I really just want to teach about the universe. I love to kind of really I call myself more of a journalist because I really believe that I want to like learn about the universe and then study it and really impart that knowledge to others. But I got into astrology when I was 15 years old. So for 20 years now, I've been reading birth charts. And at the same time, I was reading various different self-help books. Every kind of spiritual book you could think of, I was reading. And I sort of started to find this parallel between the spiritual content and astrology. And every time I would do someone's birth chart, I would always be like, oh, this isn't going to work. Like, how is this working? And it would just consistently work. So I truly believe that the birth chart, astrology, isn't going to heal your wound. It's not going to solve your problems. It's actually more the X-ray to show you what the unique, interesting story that your life is here to tell and what your destiny is. That's what I really help people do, find their destiny. And then from there, we bring in the spiritual tools, because what's great about that is that a lot of astrologers want to kind of cling to the astrology, whereas a lot of spiritual self-help coaches really want to maybe impart their spiritual knowledge onto you. But when you merge both together, you can really get a customized healing plan for someone.
Cool. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, so often, like, I hear people a lot and they're talking about like their astrologers and all this stuff. And they're like, well, my horoscope says that I'm this kind of person and I'm destined to be like this, or, it's just really interesting. And even with myself, I have readings and it's like, they say at this time of year, this is going to happen or this or that. And it starts to kind of limit me because I'm then thinking that I have the answers, or it becomes sort of like a definition, even though it's not a definition, if that makes sense.
I totally agree. That's why I hate horoscopes.
Right. Yeah.
No, I'm not a horoscope reader. I don't read horoscopes. Sometimes I do for fun. I believe that it's themes. Okay, so let me say it this way. The first thing that I really want people to understand is that life is a paradox. I'm a student and a teacher of A Course in Miracles. And, the first thing that the Course talks about is, we're not of this world. There's two worlds, right? There's the spiritual world, and then we're just in this physical experience, right? But we're spirits. So that's the paradox. We're in two different kind of energy system, so to speak. In the physical plane, we're constantly having to wait, time and space. Spiritual plane, there's no time or space, right? So there's this paradox. And so what people think that everything's destined or everything's written already, right? And then some people think that we could control our own reality and we create our own reality. And I actually think it's both at the same time. We're actually creating our own reality, and there's certain things that might have been scripted or destined, but we're in the moment of now. We can still kind of move it around, right? So we're kind of writing the script as we go. And so I believe that astrology can definitely guide us to themes that are going to be coming up for us. So for example, this past full moon was in Aquarius, and that's a community, and huge themes were coming up for me around the areas of friends and community. Started to think about that a lot. So, but you can't tell someone, oh, this is what's going to happen. It's more, this is the theme. How can you stay high vibe so you can really come from a high vibration with it versus a low vibration, right?
Right. Yeah. So it's sort of like, I'm just trying to think about, because I do read my horoscope, and
Yeah.
I definitely, like, I have certain people and they have different systems, and I always check out your stuff, and sometimes I'll look at Susan Miller,
She's the best one.
yeah, I mean,
She
she's
does it the
cool.
best.
And I check, so I look around and I sort of get ideas about what's going on, because I know that there's certain things happening like inside me, and I want to be able to understand it.
Yes.
But yeah, and I'm big into, like, I'm not a student of A Course in Miracles, but most of the time when I teach, people are like, "That's A Course in Miracles." I'm like, "Yeah, I haven't read it, but it's just sort of universal wisdom."
Totally.
But it definitely is that kind of, the duality is it's so confusing, right? Because we're like, we don't know, at least for me, it's like, sometimes I don't know whether I'm like a human or a spirit, and it can get really, like, separate, like this
Yeah.
separation. And I find that, that's one of the reasons why I thought it'd be fun to talk to you, because it's so easy for us to get further and further and further away from who we are. And sometimes I feel like astrology, at least maybe the old paradigm of astrology, because everything's changing, right, is like, it would take us further away because it would kind of define us in some way. And then we were using it not any different than like somebody else telling me who I was. Like, I'd go to a therapist and be like, "Am I crazy?" Or
Right.
which I never did, but I sometimes thought maybe when I was
I
young.
did 100 times.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes I thought maybe
I still do.
and there's nothing wrong with that. But you know what I mean? Or like getting a boyfriend and being like, "Am I worthy? Like, do you love me?" And
Right.
I feel like in some ways astrology can be that same thing. Like, it's the mirror, but we're not allowing it to be a mirror that actually reflects who we are. We're sort of using it as a mirror only showing us what we want to see. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, there's so much to say. Okay. Where do I even begin? So here's the thing. I believe that anything we can get attached to the form. This is another Course in Miracles concept. So there's the feeling and there's the form. The feeling is that spiritual plane that we're always trying to attain to, right? Even like if we're trying to, drink some wine or whatever way we're trying to get there, or maybe it's meditation. We're always trying to attain to that, like going back to the womb. Like, we want to be one, right? That love, cushiony feeling of pleasure and oneness, which is really what we are. I mean, if we're wanting to attain to it, that's clearly what the truth of life is, right? But we're in this limited time and space experience. And I don't know if you know Abraham Hicks, I'm sure you do. They talk about contrast versus desire. It's the same concept as Course in Miracles, right? Love and fear. It's the same thing. It's just contrast versus desire. So it's just think physical plane and spiritual plane. And so we're always trying to surf this paradox. And what really it is that we want to come from joy with the paradox and really enjoy the contrast. But we're trained to just be so frustrated when things don't go our way and when the contrast happens. So technically, astrology is physical Earth still, even though it's not Earth, right? It's the solar system. It's still technically physical. So we can still attach to it and be superficial with it if we don't do it right?
Right.
You know what I'm
Okay.
saying? So that's
Yeah.
what my biggest passion is to teach astrology from a spiritual perspective, because I do it too. I'll be like, "Oh my God, he's a Gemini. I can't date him." And then I'm like, "No, he's a soul. And Gemini is going to be part of his personality, and no one's perfect," right? Because contrast.
Right.
You get the negative and the positive. So another cool thing about astrology is it has all of that in its system. It's like astrology really is the syllabus for spirituality. So for example, the paradox is in there. You've got the 12 signs, but it's really 6, because there's like Gemini, but then there's Sagittarius, right? The opposite. So if you're dating, you might date a Gemini one day and be so annoyed that they're not deep. And then the next day you're dating a Sagittarius and you're so annoyed that they're not quick and witty. You know what I mean? Like a Gemini. So you're never going to get that perfection. That's just
Right.
life, right?
Right. And
world.
you would say like, well, and what I would say is like to somebody that I'm working with is, that's part of the paradigm of our own beings, right? Because some days I'm totally cool with being outside of the box and
Right.
spiritual and like not having things that normal people have, like,
Yeah.
no husband, no baby, no house, like all of these things that we're taught. And some days
Yes.
I feel like, yeah, that's amazing. I'm just me and I'm free. And that's the Sagittarius in me. And then,
Independence.
yeah, the independence. And then I get really frustrated about it. And I'm like, well, but this sucks because I'm not getting anywhere and I'm not getting there fast enough. And I'm my own worst enemy because it's my duality. And so
Right.
I find that I can identify with it so much because there's so often, that's one of the teachings, right? Is everything's our reflection. So it doesn't matter who we're dating because they're still our reflection no matter what. It's what you want to see in the
Yes.
mirror. So I think and it's like in terms of business, because I know you work with people that are building businesses too.
Mhm.
And we've talked about this because when you were first developing your plan, I remember we got on and you were like talking about my destiny and my business. And it's so funny because whenever I look at my destiny on paper, I'm like, oh, it's this big grandiose thing. And like, I'm a star and all of these words
Yeah.
that put pressure on me to feel like I'm a star, right? And so what does that mean? I'm supposed to be on Oprah and I'm supposed to win a Tony, or you like all of
Right.
these things that we think we need to be in order to be what it is, but it's just words at the end of the day. It's
Mm-hmm.
energy. So I think it's interesting because we can look at it from all angles in business perspective too. It's the same. Like to me, I feel like my business is another piece of me. Like I may as well be dating my business only because
Right.
it's my life. Like it's
Me too.
connected to me. And I want to be married to my business. And some people would say, you don't want that. And I would say, no, I want to be absolutely in love with myself and what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I still have the days where I go like, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. And
Mm-hmm.
that's the duality.
Yeah. Well, see, it's so interesting because you were talking about the mirror, and obviously astrology is a mirror because it's saying the concept of astrology is like, let's take a picture of like a frozen picture in time of the planets. And the concept is that they're going to mirror what's happening here, right? And so a birth chart is really just the minute you were born, but you can really do a chart for any moment. So the mirror concept is always working in the big way and even the small way. Like we can think of our bodies are a mirror to, like, if we're sick, it's a mirror to what our mind is doing, right? So, but when you're talking about relationships, for example, like let's say like you grew up with an energy of Aries in your childhood. You might keep attracting that Aries kind of man, right? So that's more of a theme of showing you maybe of what you're still working through, the personality filter that you're still working through, right? But the energy is the matching. So if you're negative, you're going to attract a negative person. So what I really try to teach people is that energy is different than the chart. The chart is the personality filter that your energy is coming through. So a lot of people will be like, well, I can't date Leos because I've always dated a Leo and they don't work. And they might be triggering something in your chart, but really most of the time it's because we're attracting that negative Leo. We keep attracting the negative one instead of the positive one. Right.
Right.
So, but I also find that like, I always do I have a funny little thing I do in one of my videos where I talk about how, like, if you break your arm, you're not going to use the X-ray as the cast to heal the broken arm. You're going to use the X-ray to see what's broken, but then you're going to have a totally different healing plan to actually heal what's broken. So, yeah. So like, it would be silly to just take the X-ray from the doctor and be like, oh, this will do, like, what? No.
Right.
So I like to tell people that, like, really I'm a spiritual teacher first and foremost, because as much as astrology is so amazing, I don't want to get stuck there, And another piece of what you were saying too is the context of where you're going. So a lot of people think that your sign is definitely a huge core part of your life story, but it's really your destiny, which is the north node in your chart. The north and south node are this line, this destiny line. And the south side of your chart is like where you get stuck. and the north is what you really want, and they're opposing each other like a rubber band, okay? But the south is actually what you do best. It's like your golden ticket, but if you are drowning in the negativity of it, it's almost like a blessing and a curse, right? And that's the leverage point to get our destiny happening. And so that's what I help people with, because a lot of people might say, like you were saying before, like, oh, you have to get married. Oh, you have to have kids. Oh, this, oh, that.
Right.
But it's really based on the chart. So like if their destiny is Cancer and their biggest dream is to be a mom, that's why, you know?
Right.
Whereas someone else might their destiny might be Capricorn, and it's the reverse. Their destiny is to get away from the home and they want career. So it's like, that's another cool part about astrology, is like we can have more compassion and not judge people for what they desire.
Right. Because everybody's got like a different roadmap. Yeah. It's so interesting. I can't remember, I've had so many different people look at, over the years, like different people looking at charts and things. And I'm like, I'm trying to remember my south node and my north node. I remember like hearing about it, but.
What year were you born?
79.
Okay, you might be Virgo North Node, but we'll look it up.
I'm a Sagittarius, and I don't remember what the South Node is or where they are, the North Node. What I know I have some crazy things going on. Like I have everything's below the horizon. I have this bucket. I have like Chiron is the handle. There's cool stuff happening. But, I think it's interesting what you said about the opposition. I never thought about it like that. But one of the things that as I've built, interestingly, as I've built like the program and what I'm teaching now is I think that I've built, because I've created this thing called Loving to Be Me, which is what this whole thing is, this roundtable, this collective.
Nice.
And, this piece of it is a component of the material. It's just supportive material for people, because I feel like I really wanted to find the balance between giving people information that supported them and then actually helping them through. But really, I think in some ways it sounds similar, because I want to provide the framework for the healing. I provide the roadmap for them to access their full potential, right? And to actually fully realize who you are. It's sort of the same thing. So it's kind of like, if you were to put it all together, the astrology is the X-ray, and then you would go to like a physical therapist, and they would say, okay, here's your protocol. Like what I've done is designed a protocol to take you through that process. So I think it's cool the way it fits together. But thinking about the North and South node and what you're saying, that it's kind of like opposite in some ways, right? Because the South is, say it again, the South is the
South is kind of your double-edged sword. It's like, if it's the side of you that is think of it this way. It's like the biggest pain that you've experienced in your life. That's the South node, but it's also what you do best. So I'll just give you an example. For me, my South node is Aquarius. And so the negative of Aquarius for me is that I'm mentally obsessed to the point where my destiny, Leo, all I want to do is take action, which is fire. That's my destiny. But all I do is air. Think. And I'm obsessed, and I never go to take the action, right? And it drains me. It can get to the point of almost depression, where like my thoughts are so intense and I start to really second guess myself, right? But the positive is that what I do best is ideas and content and spiritual concepts, and all of that stuff is what I do best. Teaching spiritual concepts is my golden ticket, right? So when I go to focus on that, I naturally get the fun, entertainment Leo and the action if I just focus on that. So it's this blessing and this curse. It's really interesting, and obviously it's going to be very unique depending on someone's birth chart, because it's two layers. There's the house and the sign. So it's 2 layers. There's 2 themes going on at once.
Yeah, we'd have to look at mine again, and I can't remember what it was.
I know your North Node. I don't know what house it's in. I just looked it up on the table.
Oh, you did?
You're learning Virgo, and your South is Pisces. So you're saying before is your comfort zone. What you do best is the dream, but your destiny is to take the dream into reality, to take logical steps.
Yes, I remember you saying this to me before, and one of the things that I just saw coming back to me now, and interestingly, one of my favorite phrases is the things that we perceive as our biggest downfalls are actually our greatest assets, which is basically saying your South node leads you to your North node, which takes you to your destiny. but really, truthfully, one of the things, the journey I've personally been on is that the embodiment, like the actual grounding, taking something that is so light and full of so much light and love. I think it goes back to that duality, because it's like, all I want to do is love unconditionally. And so my biggest downfall has always been that I've refused to see the dark, the suffering, the pain in people. I didn't want to acknowledge it was there, because I loved them so much that I was afraid that if I acknowledged it and said, yes, what you did was wrong, or yes, you hurt me, or yes, I got hurt, or whatever it was, I wouldn't say it. And so I ended up cutting myself off. I cut like half of me out. And so that's kind of where I am now, as I've been learning, okay, you know what? You have to, at least, you don't have to do anything, but it serves me to get where I'm going, to learn how to do that, to like actually, understand that the dream and all of that has to be brought into the body. Like it has to be brought into this world, because I don't know, you could say whatever you want to say, but many people have said, like, some people are just not of this world. We're just not. And we're all spirit, but some of us are more spirit than others. And I think that was my biggest challenge. Was they said, and it was brilliant, because she said to me, she said, you know, until you learn how to like really fully be in this world and work with earth, work with like the full embodiment, she said, you can manifest like the highest teachings and all of this stuff you want. She said, but you're gonna have a really hard time buying a house.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like,
this is the reality. But what's ironic is that's everything you are. Like, you might find yourself constantly being like, well, it's not logical enough. We got to get more details, you know, like, right. But that's not where you come from. Where you come from is the dream. And that's where you were saying before, is just the rose colored, like Pisces want to wear the rose colored glasses, because they're the last sign of the zodiac cycle. So they want to attain to the highest level of spirituality. Right?
Interesting. That's so interesting. And that would be, because many readings I've had, we very rare, or she may have talked about the North and South Node, and I just don't remember. But it's so fascinating to me to see all this information. And then the more adept you get at knowing, and one of my biggest things is no matter what it serves us to spend time getting to know who we are, like every crevice, like every little quirk. We want to, not that we need to understand it so much as accept it. And I think in the acceptance comes the transformation. And so it's one of the reasons why I think it's so powerful, because what you can do, and what even in that like brief moment we just kind of uncovered, was exactly, you just explained very clearly exactly the same thing that I experienced in my life, was, you know, was that rose colored glasses of like, you know, the innocence and
that's Virgo.
Is that Virgo? Yeah. Okay.
There's simplicity. They want simple, strip everything, like virgin innocence. And it's also food too, and the body.
Okay. And so that's the north. That was my north node.
That's your north. That's where you want. That's what you want.
That's so, it's just, that's so cool. And that's why I wanted to get this and share it with everyone, because it's so amazing that it helps me understand myself, you know, and that's what's so great about it. And it
makes you not feel crazy.
Right. And also it's kind of like, okay, great. So now I understand that piece of myself. It gives me some more motivation to understand like what I do need to sort of work on, or what's going to help me the most. And what I learned recently about myself was it really wasn't hard. What I needed to do was, because I was very separate, I was sort of like dismembered. My soul was in one place and my body was in another. And so all I had to do was literally put the two together and say, hey, little soul, little innocent, happy soul that doesn't want to be in a place that's scary or dark, or whatever. Come here, get in here. I'll protect you, but you've got to sit, you know, inside. And it's really starting to change things. So that's the beauty of understanding things like the North and South Node. When you read your horoscope, you don't get that information.
No, and that's what I'm talking about. So another piece to the horoscope is the horoscope is generalized. So it's actually a solar horoscope, it's taking your sun energy, Sagittarius, and it's pretending that it's the rising sign, the first house. So it's going to show you things landing in houses based on that. And that's not accurate, really, or I don't want to say it's not accurate, because it can be an accurate reading as a generalized, but it's way more specific when you have an astrologer looking at your exact birth chart with the correct rising sign and all the other stuff. And like, so for example, this last full moon, Aquarius Leo, was really strong for me because that's my destiny line. So it was in my destiny, it was literally triggering that point, and it was like, it was literally knocked me down. Like, and I knew it was coming because I'm an astrologer, you know, but like, I didn't know like how it was going to be, you know, but I obviously, because I'm an astrologer, I have that voice in my head saying, okay, this is the transit that's coming up right now. Like, you just got to be with it, you know?
Right.
So I think that, so it's not like that I have all, like, people are like, just heal me now. And I'm like, no, like, you still have to do the work, but it's like, you have more clarity and more understanding of what's happening and what you're here to do. And that's why I'm really passionate right now about branding with the birth chart, because if you can take your story and make it a bigger mission,
right,
and then eventually monetize that, right? That's, I mean, that's incredible.
Right. And I think one of the things that, because we've been sort of, building our stuff at the same time, and we have sort of similar stories in some ways. And I think it's really kind of, when you went from I forget what you were, but then you were like, I'm just JFO. Like, I don't know why.
Yes.
Why do I have to be like all this stuff?
Things.
Like, I'm just me, right? And it's kind of like the same thing that I went through, where I was like, well, first I was a healer, and then I was a spiritual teacher, and then I was a self-realization coach. And like, and eventually I got to the point where I'm like, none of these words mean anything.
Yes.
Like, none of this stuff matters. We're walking around, like, at least me personally, I'm just trying to prove to the world how valuable I am by calling myself something, you know,
right.
by giving myself a title and by like putting on an outfit, which is all not who we are. And so
exactly.
when I was going through sort of my journey this past year, that was what hit me when I woke up one day and was like, oh my God, it is so simple. Like, I just want to be me. Like, I just want to love me. And I don't know why that's so hard. And it's not just hard for me, it's hard for everyone. Like, most people are like, oh, I love myself. I'm like, let's look a little bit deeper. Do you really love yourself? Like, what happens when you make a mistake? Like, what happens when you put on 5 pounds? Like, what happens if your boyfriend breaks up with you? Or what happens if you don't get the job? Or all of those little things. And people keep saying, oh, you're right. Like, actually, I really don't. Like, I don't accept that. There's so much non-acceptance. But I think it's so interesting that we both kind of came to the same realization of like, I just want to be me. Like, I'm just me. I'm enough as I am, which is so cool. And so one of the things, I know there was one day we talked and we were talking about like the world and just like what was happening in the world. And and we had some really amazing things. And one of the purposes of this roundtable concept that I sort of cooked up was the fact that I believe that we all have all of these answers and we all have amazing things to say. And so sometimes I get 5 people in a room and we all share stories. And sometimes I talk to somebody directly one-on-one because we have a specific conversation. But given all the stuff that like where we are in the world, what's happening, we're seeing some darkness, like people appear to be struggling, not necessarily struggling and suffering. Like, there's a lot of stuff happening. Like, what is your sort of take on that? And because you do have the astrological tools, I know you can see kind of, you can even do a chart for like the planet and stuff, right? Because I know
you can do like the transits of now that are happening.
Right. Like, you can look at like, I know one woman that I know, she calls it like the weather. It's like the astrological weather, and she report on like what's happening.
For me, it's Sky News.
Yeah, Sky News, which is a brilliant name. But so as you're looking at all of that, like, what's your take on what's happening, and what is your I don't want to say like advice, but like, what's your what can people do like with what you know? Of Course in Miracles and knowing from astrology, like what are some things that can help people feel comfortable? Because there's so much happening that's really freaking people out, and we can either like buy into it and kind of go in the, you know, the crapper, so to speak, or we can go the other way and not go in the crapper and kind of ascend. So I'm just curious.
Well, Pluto's been in the sign of Capricorn since 2008. Pluto is the transit that moves the slowest. So you will never Pluto takes like 200 something friggin' years to go through all, like it's crazy how long it takes. So it'll stay in one sign for like close to 20 years. So I don't have the exact amount off the top of my head, but it's been there since 2008, and Pluto rules our wounding. It's a Scorpio planet. It rules like death and transformation and like how we're trying to grow and expand in almost in a way of wounding and tragedy. And Capricorn rules career, work, structures, government structures, right? So since 2008 is when like the economy crashed, right? All that stuff went down.
Oh yeah, I gotta forget. Yeah.
It's kind of weird. Everyone always mentions 2008, and I'm like, it's Pluto, people. You don't even know.
Right.
You know what I mean? So it's like these things don't happen randomly. They happen kind of in parallel to these transits. But we all have Capricorn in a different house in our chart. So one of the things that I like to tell people is we think it's 12 signs, but it's really 144 combinations. Because you could have Aries in the Aries house, Aries in the Taurus house, right? So 12.
So confusing. Yeah.
So many combinations.
I don't know how you guys do it.
It's crazy.
So glad
it's
that
crazy.
It's not my job because I'm
going to be creating a PDF called the 144 combinations of the zodiacs to organize it because people don't get it. But these, so what's cool is like we're all having this universal Capricorn experience, but we're all experiencing it in different areas. So so that's another reason why it feels very chaotic. It's like you could turn the news and everyone's freaking out, but they're all freaking out with the same transit, but in different ways. You know what I mean? So it's like, it can be intense because you're like, I want to heal myself. I want to heal the world. There's so much going on. Like, you know what I mean? Right. So really you like you were saying, you got to focus on self first, like oxygen mask, you know? For me, that Capricorn transit's in my self house, my Aries house. So for me, I'm like feeling the weight of my own career. Like, when is it going to happen? When is it going to work? Right. You know?
Right.
So, but to kind of summarize what you were saying is like, there's all these transits. That's just one of like many, you know? But I think it's because we as a society, especially America, I mean, I say especially America just because that's what I know. I'm really in the bubble of America. I'm sure there's a lot of different communities in the world that might be more highly spiritually advanced than us. But I think I was in the classroom. I was did education, and I was a teacher, and I quit because I was like, I can't teach all of this form stuff to these kids, right. Not teach them love and spirituality and all the things they really need, you know, like,
right. Yeah.
Your ABCs, but we need to know how to love, you know?
Right.
And
yeah.
so what's happening is a manifestation of us not ever really learning spirituality. Like religion is great if it's done right. But because we've separated religion and spirituality from, the general curriculum of just learning how to deal with the world, I don't think people have learned how to love. They haven't learned how to deal with their issues, you know?
Right.
There's no therapy class in second grade, third grade, fourth grade, like
right.
Every grade, you know? So, and no one's learned how to meditate. No one's learned how to calm the mind to even listen to what it's saying to you.
Right.
Know?
Yeah.
So
that I get.
Yeah. So I definitely think there's a general wounding of not understanding how to deal with the internal, because like you were saying before, self-love, really, like the internal is all there is. The internal is just there. It's your external is a reflection of the internal. And it can be crazy when you even know that information and you're like, how do I change my internal? Because I keep looking at the external. It's like a catch-22. That's what I'm dealing with right now. So I think that the second piece to it is the media. And it's great that we have the internet and Facebook and all these things and live streaming, and our technology is going like this, but our spiritual muscle, is it keeping up, you know? So we're bombarded by negative news.
Yeah.
all the time. We
Yeah.
don't get positive news. And if vibration is what we are, of course it's going to start to expand to more negative and more Cancer and more this and more, because it's a collective consciousness. So
Right.
I think really we can't fix the collective consciousness until we fix our own soul and our own self. And that's why I'm really passionate about helping people living from their destiny, because if more people are living from their destiny, more people are doing what they love, the world's it's gonna be better,
Right. Yeah, no, I totally get it. And I think that for a while I was sort of scratching my head and I was like, what is this? Like, why did I name it whatever? Why did I pick this concept of loving to be me? And like, what does it mean? And what am I teaching people? And like, why am I here? And what is happening? And I think that over the process of this year, especially, like, I came to understand, oh, wait a minute, this is like serious stuff. It's very much like realizing your destiny. It's self-realization. It's like your soul's destiny, like learning how to actually be with your soul. Because what I've come to learn and understand is most of us have not yet quite accepted the fact that our soul is what's sort of running the show. The soul is the most important thing. We have had mind, body, and spirit forever, right? But we didn't put it in a triangle and say mind and body are on the bottom and spirit's on top. So we're forgetting that is actually the place of like the most important place.
Yes.
And so we don't have we've lost our GPS. Like we've lost our way home a lot of times. And it's interesting because I talk to a lot of people, and I'm sure you hear people say this a lot too. You have two different camps of people. You have the like ultra spiritual, very sensitive, empathic people that are always like, oh, I wish I could just go home. I just don't like it here. I want to go home. And they're so desperate to like get out of this world. I hear that so often.
There's days where I think that.
I know. I think we all think that at some point in our lives. But
we're spiritual. We want to be. We're like, why am I here? But we're also expanding.
Right. And I think that whenever I would find that question and it would come to me and I would say, what am I doing here? I don't want to be here. I had to be very careful because I had an opportunity to actually not be here. And, I had a chance to choose and say, okay, actually I'll stay, right. I don't need to go. When I got hit by the car,
wow.
Yeah. And that's in my chart. Like it's specifically in my chart where you can see where something, I don't know what, something did something where the woman that read my chart, she said something happened to you when you were 30 years old that knocked you into your body. And I was like, that would be a taxi colliding into me. And she could see it. And then later on, when I was working with someone else, it wasn't until this year that I actually, I had to kind of not acknowledge, I guess, the Virgo in me, the positive one was like, it's okay, no big deal. It wasn't until like this year, like only recently, where I actually sat down and said, oh my God, I didn't realize how hard I've been hit by that car. And it hasn't been until now that the actual pain from the accident has manifested. It took like 6 years. But it's so interesting because it was that thing of not wanting to be in your body, of not wanting to be.
So did you have a near-death experience?
No, it was so instantaneous that I didn't even it was like that. It's like they talk about it sometimes where if your soul, I mean, I don't know if it's an advanced soul or what, there's some things that I don't, I'm not an expert in. Oh my God, my dog is here. That you can die and actually be born in a moment, in a flash. It can happen that fast. So I don't know if that's what happened. Who knows? But what it was like a very, very specific thing that was in my destiny to knock me back into my body, because I was like, bye, I'm getting out of here. And they were like, no, you're not. But the thing
and your learning body, which is so interesting.
Yeah. But it was me that chose. And when I did that, I said, okay, you know what? I will, I will spend the rest of my life teaching people how to actually love themselves, because I obviously wasn't doing that. And so here I am doing all of this stuff. But I talk to people all the time, and we hear this thing where we've lost our home, and even just today I was asking some people, I said, so what is your home? Like, what does home mean to you?
Mm-hmm.
What is your home? What is it? And they were speechless. Nobody could answer.
Yeah.
They were all like,
I don't know.
my home is like when I'm doing my life's work, or when I'm helping people, or when I'm, like they had concepts of what it felt like to be home. And when I say home, I mean like in touch with your soul home. So it's just so interesting, like the way it all is starting to come together. And so what we're talking about is teaching people how to actually like enjoy the world as our home, because you have a lot of people that also talked about this whole thing, when you had this big wave X that happened back in the blood moon of September, and all the souls were ascending. And I know you were sort of you knew about that. And I think it's really interesting, because everybody thought they were like, everything was going to get better, and everything kind of got worse. Like for me, it got worse.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I feel like there's no better or worse.
Exactly.
Like that's what I've learned through like meditation and Buddhism, that like everything's technically neutral and we add like our meaning to it,
Right.
So it's like technically like that's actually the issue. Like I'm like, why isn't life getting better? That's the ego. The ego's like wants it to be better,
Right.
Another thing is, so this full moon, I happened to also I was going on dates. I've been dating a lot, and I had this guy that I like went on a fourth date with, and it just became a mess because we weren't right for each other, but there was very high intense chemistry. And that was kind of blinding me a little bit to really see that he wasn't the right guy for me. So I kind of had to let him go, and it was a very painful situation. So through that whole experience, I was like, oh my God, like I'm never going to find love. I'm 35, So I like decided to make this whole love altar, and I'm going to start manifesting my soulmate. And I was meditating, and I was really trying to kind of find, well, what's really standing in my way? And so as I was meditating, I started crying hysterically, and I was like, I still don't freaking love myself. And I was like, wait a minute. Like I have been working at this stuff for like 20 something years. Like this is ridiculous. How do I not love myself? I'm a freaking spiritual teacher. Like what is going on?
Right.
So I started to think about like, well, why don't I love myself? And I was like, because I'm not a 6-figure business earner yet. I'm not at the weight I want to be, I'm not living where I want to live. I'm not all these things. And then a voice was like, self-love is loving yourself for no reason.
Mm-hmm.
And like think of like how we love like an animal. Like an animal.
I know, that's why I'm saying my dog is here. Oh, he's like not having any of it. There he is.
Hi.
He looks crazy.
Like we're not like, why didn't you make 6 figures today? Like
I know, like my dog, I'm like, you're supposed to be earning all the money.
Right.
No, indeed. Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think that one of the things that I've discovered through all of this is that we're looking at the divine feminine and what's happening in the world. And that's exactly it, is that we are so judgmental, and, we'll talk again sometime, because I don't know if I have time to get into all of it right now. Or actually, I think I can explain it like very, very quickly. Yeah. If you go all the way back to the beginning of time, right? And you had God, and then God separated himself from himself so he could love himself more. So he made man.
Right.
And he separated man into 2, and he made woman, right? And so you had these 3. You had God, man, and woman. And the first thing man and woman did was they went around naming everything. Mm-hmm. They said, like, that's a tree, that's a snake, that's an apple, that's this, that's that. And so when they started doing that, when they started naming everything, they started giving everything a quality. Mm-hmm. Not just a quality, equality. They created equality and inequality.
Whoa, you're freaking me out. This is so in alignment with what I was just going to say. Continue.
Yeah. But so that's what created the separation and the judgment.
Yes. And it's so funny you're saying that, because I have a thing called my 1, 2, 3, 4 method that follows the elements of astrology, because they go fire, earth, air, water, repeat. And so you had like God, oneness, that's fire. And then it's split into physical. So that's like similar to what you're saying. It's spiritual and physical, right?
Right.
And then you have a thought about it, then you have an emotion about it. But what you're saying is so interesting because it's the emotion would be woman, right? The physical would be man.
Right. Yeah. Like
The spiritual will be God, and the mental would be the thoughts that we're putting onto things, like you were just saying, the equality, which is interesting because another thing I'm doing is I'm studying Dr. Pat Allen. I don't know if you've ever heard of her.
No.
But she is the god of relationships. She's a therapist, and she teaches you how to get married and how to be married and how to stay married. And she talks about how equality works in the workforce, but it does not work in a relationship. One person has to play the masculine energy role, and one person has to play the feminine energy role. And what I've been learning doing her work is she talks about actually scientifically that we all started as women. And 8 weeks in, that's when the men get the shot of testosterone when the baby's being formed. That's why men have boobies. Okay. So I know it's kind
of like how you say that. So,
okay. So basically, long story short, is I was thinking about it and I had this epiphany that because Marianne Williamson always talks about there's a reason why God is a he. And I realized that because we're all technically women at the end of the day, that God, creator, is he. And to be in faith is actually to be passive, patient, and vulnerable, and to just surrender and let the creator kind of guide you, you know? So in your relationship.
Spirit, soul. Yes. Yeah, it's like what we're saying. Yeah.
Right.
And I think my dog has jumped down. He's like, hoorah. He's like, that's it.
What are you guys talking about?
Yeah, he's like, Eureka. His name is actually Archimedes. That's why it's funny, because I think Archimedes is the one who said Eureka. But yeah, no, and see how amazingly like complex and simple it is at the same time.
Right. Paradox.
And that's the paradox of it. And I think that was when I started going, oh my gosh, we all have, you know, just to like bring it full circle to what we're talking about, astrology, right? It's like, that's our roadmap. That's our X-ray. And it is so simple. And we overcomplicate it because we want to give everything a name and an equality. And we want to know what it is and we want to define it. And something that I always struggled with my whole life was people would say to me, now, as soon as when you start a relationship, don't define it, because as soon as you define it, the relationship is over. Or as soon as you start your business, as soon as you define your business, the business growth is over. And I'm like, but how do I launch something or build something without knowing what it is? And I think that at the end of the day, that's our biggest human mind fuck. This is the one time I'll swear, is because we're like, okay, so I have to know what I am. Right. You know, like I have to understand it. I can't just be me. I've got to like know what I am. So like, what's going on? Like, what is my destiny? Like, dear, like God, show me why I'm here, because I'm overcomplicating it so much that I can't just trust what my heart says.
Right. Because because here's the thing. One person can sit in a room and meditate all day long, and maybe they're peaceful, but did they really like create anything, you know? And then another person could be like, hustle, 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 and they create all these things, but are they happy? So it's like crazy balance. And another thing she talks about is masculine is the one that goes out, hunts, and does, right? Right. And feminine is the one that just receives. And so that's also the paradox too. It's like, as an entrepreneur and someone with a big mission, it's like, how do we hustle like with the masculine energy, but take a step back and still have space for that feminine to receive, right? To surrender and receive. It's a lot. It
is a lot. And yet I think that if we actually think about it with what we've just said, we've actually made it quite simple, because we basically said we have the triangle, right? We have man and woman on the bottom, right?
Right.
At the top is spirit. And it could be anything. It could be mind, body, and spirit. It could be man, woman, and spirit, or God. It could be, child. There's a woman that wrote a book called The Emotional Edge, and she calls it parent, child, and adult. It's all the same thing, and it's the pyramid, and it's basically like, how do you get from the bottom of the pyramid to the top of the pyramid? And what's really like trippy is like one of the things that's, you know, we have the triangles, the downward triangle and the upward triangle. That's feminine. That's masculine, right? And this is the womb, and this is the, I don't know, like the pyramid, the upward. And if I've learned anything in my life, it's that in order to get up, you have got to go down. It's like digging to China. You dig you dig and 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 you dig. And eventually you find like your pearl, right? When you find your pearl, that's self-realization. And then boom, all of a sudden you're at the top and you're like, how did I get here? Because I thought I was going down.
Yeah. It's so funny because I don't have it on me right now, but I did this thing called the JFO curve. And it was like, it was pretty funny on my Periscope show. And it was following that 1, 2, 3, 4 method I was talking about. But it was, if I had the visual, I could show you, but it was like this same concept. It was
you can
yeah,
because this video is going to go in
I'll
a
give
place
it
where you can send it to me, and people can like look at it, or if it's a downloadable, like you can do a thing where they sign up and get it. We'll set it up so people can find these like all these cool things you're talking about. There'll be links so people can like see what it all looks like and use it if it's something that you've created that's like helpful. But I just think it's so fascinating because we've just been so fixated on going to the top that we completely didn't understand that we need to go down first. And what you said about the south node and the north node is the same thing. You go down.
It is. You go down first. It's an arrow. So you go like this. You go to the south, and then it propels you forward to the north.
Right.
You have to go back to the south first. That's what I've learned.
Right. And if you think about that in terms of if you like wanted to get like super geeky, and sometimes I do get super geeky. If you look at like the Bhagavad Gita, like the bow, right?
Yeah.
The bow, that's it. The bow is what is the tool that takes us to where we're going. So, astrology is a tool. And it's an amazing tool. And like, I'm just like, we could probably talk about this for hours and hours and hours. We can just like keep going. And, we can do this. Like, one of the things I'm finding is when I do these interviews with people and we talk about stuff, then we're like, hey, wait, we, like, here's a question that we didn't even talk about. Like, why do we suffer? Like there's a really, really big one. So, a lot of the people that I talk to, we do it a second time, and then we like really dig into the actual questions that people have, or like what we have of like what's changing in the world, and what's changing for ourselves, and what are the concepts. Like, I kind of think that concept of going down in order to go up is kind of, it is. We've always said as above, so below, or as below, so above. Like, and I always get it confused because I say it both ways. And, like we look at the triangles, and when you put them together, they make the Star of David, like you've got the masculine and feminine, and together they make the star. So we're coming back to this unification of it, but like, there's so many questions, like why,
so many questions.
That's the fun of it, right? It's like, so why do you have to go down in order to go up? Like, that makes absolutely no sense at all. And yet, if you look at like Alice in Wonderland, like, you got to go down the rabbit hole in order to figure out who you are, or you've got to go over the rainbow and get super lost. Like, I think that's the fun of it. And the duality is like, in some way, I think that like, just to bring it full, like, because I always like to tie things up in a neat little bow at the end. The whole point of all of this is that our souls, right, are very much at home in that other world, the spirit world, because that's where they're from, right? And then we come to Earth and we get very, very, very lost.
Yeah.
And the whole mission is to just get back home, to get to that wholeness, to like understand who we are. And that's why what you do is so brilliant, because you're helping people. Like, I think that in some ways, we all know that we want to be happy, and so we do it for that reason. But it's deeper than that. It's because our souls know, like, with our soul's evolution, that until we actually fully come back, we come back, and we cycle through in the Bardo. So in some ways, what we're doing is we're not just like helping people realize their destiny in this lifetime. Every time we help a soul fully get another piece of the puzzle, that soul is one piece closer to actually fully ascending.
Totally.
So how cool is that?
So cool.
It's very deep. It's very, very, very deep.
It's so deep. It's so deep.
It is so cool. Well, we've been going for like about an hour. Like I said, we could do this for hours, but with time is money, and I know you have lots of stuff to do, so I don't want to keep you for 5 hours, but just remind before we go just what your website is, how to get in touch with you, all that good stuff, and then it'll also be linked below so people can find you that way also. But you know,
Awesome.
it's always fun to say it.
Yeah, so I am like about to build some epic funnels and my website. My website right now is just a landing page because I rebranded. So you can go to justjfo.com, and right now it's just a landing page that'll take you to join my free Facebook group called Master Your Destiny on Facebook. And anyone can email me as well at askjfo@gmail.com.
That's so cool. I love that. I love it. And I love it's just your name. Like, it's not complicated. It's not pretentious. And honestly, this is some of the most, I just love it because it's like the most enlightened conversations. Like, I love having these conversations because it's so clear that we actually do know what we're talking about. And like, how exciting is that? Who would have thought that like 35-year-old, like bubbly balls of light would actually know something? Like,
hey, when you're a self-help addict, you learn something.
Exactly. How many books have I been reading?
Me too.
To help that I would learn something over the years. Well, thank you. This has been so great. And we'll come back and we'll talk again, and we'll dig into more stuff. You can't see my hands, so they're waving them around. Bye.